Thank you for inviting me here. Thank you for gathering in this very weird place. Yeah, and I have to apologize ahead of time for being brief and for having to run off because, as you know, as some of you know, I'm going to be giving a talk tonight, and my publisher, my wonderful publisher who brought me here, has packed my schedule pretty tight. But I really do appreciate the chance to talk to this new coalition. It's definitely needed. Well, certainly we need ambition. We need that sense of urgency that was just mentioned. I'm going to tell you something that may be a little bit difficult to hear, which is that my book, This Changes Everything. It's about 600 pages. It has 70 pages of endnotes. It had a team of more than 10 researchers over a 5-year period. And I take research really, really seriously, in part because I have a lot of enemies. I don't just do the research, I fact-check the research, we fact-check the fact-checkers, then we had 3 lawyers pick us to pieces. One of the things I'm very proud of about this book is that there are tens of thousands of facts in it, and I've only had to correct 2 facts. I've only had to send, I sent a letter to my publishers and asked them to correct 2 things for the next edition. One of them is that the title of a book that I read to my 2-year-old, I somehow got wrong, and this is entirely my mistake, not my researchers. They challenged me on it. I said, I'm sure. And it's the name of the book, I said, is called Have You Ever Seen a Moose? And in fact, the name of the book is Looking for a Moose. Someone wrote us a letter, and in fact, I got the name of the book wrong, and it's being corrected in the next edition. The other fact that is being corrected in the next edition is the nice thing I said about the Netherlands and renewable energy. I included the Netherlands on a list of countries that had kept a fair amount of their energy in public hands and had ambitious renewable energy transition. And after the book came out, I was corrected. And my researcher feels terrible about this. He lost sleep over it. He says it's true. The Netherlands has a terrible renewable energy track record, and we have to correct this for the next edition. We looked into it, and it's true. And we are correcting it. And it's shocking that a country with your resources and indeed with your history in renewable energy has 4.4% of its power coming from renewables. When we look at Germany and see that 25% of Germany's grid is coming from renewables. When we look at China, a developing country without the resources, and that is only starting the development pathway in recent years, and that they have made a higher target than the Netherlands, 20% non-fossil fuels by 2030. Surely, rich countries like yours and mine, look, I say terrible things about my own country. Now, I'm not just insulting you. Canada is the #1 climate criminal, so I'm an equal opportunity hard ass here. But there's no excuse in my mind. And I know that, everybody's trying to get their targets together ahead of Paris. We need to do better than targets. We need to actually act on them. And already, I think, the action isn't in line with the ambition. So, this isn't a time to be patting ourselves on the back for doing something, okay? Doing something is not enough. Pointing to, a sustainable energy arm of a large multinational that on the whole is having a damaging impact is not enough because it's late in the game, right? And the reason why in English I call the book This Changes Everything is because where we are in 2014 is we are somewhere where there are no non-radical options left on the table. Either everything changes in our physical world if we stay on the road we're on, and that road leads straight to 4 to 6 degrees warming, and that's not my statistics, that's PricewaterhouseCoopers statistic. That's the World Bank statistic, that's the International Energy Agency statistic. So either everything changes about our physical world, or we need to make some profound changes to our political and economic system. Indeed, we need to change everything about how we think about the economy in order to get our emissions down in time to keep it below the target that our own government set in Copenhagen, which is 2 degrees Celsius warming. Anything above that is completely unacceptable. Our governments have agreed to that, and yet we are on a road towards 4 to 6 degrees warming. And we stay on that road with these deals that are being heralded as historic and groundbreaking, including the US-China deal, including your own inadequate targets. We're not getting there. We have to move beyond this mindset that all we have to do is show that we're doing something. We actually have to do what we agreed to, which is keep temperatures below 2 degrees warming, which, by the way, is extremely dangerous. That is already a very high target. Indeed, African delegates marched through the hallways of the Bella Center in 2009 and called it genocide. They said we cannot survive these targets. Island states protested and chanted under the slogan 1.5 to survive. And our government said, no, we can't meet a 1.5 target, but we can meet a 2 degree target. And then what happened is the economic crisis hit, and our governments threw those ambitions under the bus and said, no, now it has to all be about the economy. And that's why I have done this somewhat controversial thing of saying that this is a battle between our economic system and our climate system. We do need to talk about capitalism because we know this battle is already going on. It's just that capitalism is winning. It's winning when our politicians tell us we can't afford to keep those targets. No, that's not politically realistic. But we are in this moment where political realism is hitting up against the planet's boundaries. Political limits and physical limits are in conflict. They're in conflict here, they're in conflict in China, they're in conflict in the United States, they're in conflict in my country, in Canada, where our government tells us that our only way of not ending up in economic crisis is to dig up the Alberta tar sands, a fossil fuel source that is 3 to 4 times more greenhouse gas intensive than conventional oil. We're all getting versions of this same story of why we can't do what we've committed to do to prevent catastrophic warming. So we need to dig deeper, and we need to actually talk about this economic system, which is failing us on many other fronts. So, I think that this coalition is important. It is important to bring these stakeholders together, but what I think we need to do is be more ambitious, not only in our targets, but also in our coalitions, in who we bring together and how we define this movement. In the book, I make an argument that if we want to understand why we have failed to tackle the climate crisis, we have to look at the terrible timing we had, the terrible historical timing that this crisis hit the political stage at the worst moment in our sort of ideological evolution collectively, that being the late 1980s. 1988 was the year that the IPCC was formed. 1988 was the year that the first intergovernmental meeting was held to set emission reduction targets. This is the year before the Berlin Wall collapsed. It's the first free trade deal that was signed between Canada and the US that became the prototype for the whole so-called free trade era. It became the triumph of this idea that history had ended and that it was the role of government just to get out of the way. So, I was asked what I think of the idea of the circular economy. I think it's a fantastic idea. I think we have no shortage of amazing models that we know work. We can point to them. We can point to zero waste systems. We can point to the most brilliant energy efficient agriculture. We can point to cities that have redesigned themselves to make cars obsolete. We have the best practices. We know they work. We can point to an economy the size of Germany that is showing that decentralized renewables are ready for prime time. But what we're failing to do is tell the truth about why none of this is happening at the speed with which it needs to happen to keep us below 2 degrees. And that's because there's a fundamental conflict between the ideology that still has our elites in its grasps, which is that their role is to simply facilitate the accumulation of profits by multinational corporations. That's why we're not talking about regulating corporations. That's why it's all about voluntary measures at the UN, even here. What are corporations going to voluntarily do instead of what we as citizens are going to tell them they have to do? It's why we aren't talking about a genuine polluter pays framework, because this ideology has been so triumphant. So the truth is, and this is why I say that we need to broaden our coalitions, is that this crisis hit us at the moment of ideological triumph for the neoliberal project, when it was extremely hard to confront this idea that what the French call the pensée unique. Now we're not in a moment of pensée unique. Indeed, we are at this moment where we're having a deeper conversation about the legacy of inequality that this pensée unique has created around the world. We're talking about inequality in a way that's never happened in my lifetime, with the books of Thomas Piketty and the Occupy movement around the world. And people know that this economic system is failing them on many levels, that it's creating rampant insecurity. In addition to climate insecurity, that it's creating rampant joblessness. So when we are in this moment where hundreds of thousands of workers are on the streets protesting the impact of austerity on public services, on transit, on rails, on healthcare, why aren't they part of this coalition? Because it's that very logic that is destabilizing our climate system. It's the same narrative of profit before all else. And only when we're able to build a coalition that is as broad as the resistance to this economic model is, will we be able to live up to the challenge of this historic moment. I think that the real opportunity right now is that a huge number of people know that this economic system is failing, but all they know how to do is just say stop. All they know how to do is say, okay, we don't want these cuts. We want to just protect the status quo. And that's not enough. That isn't enough to galvanize a new economy. But I think what could be enough is taking all the incredible knowledge that is coming out of green design, of ecological thinking, that is creating all of these models, none of which are being taken to scale, but that shows that actually we can do this. And the research that shows us that when we invest in renewables, particularly decentralized renewables, in energy efficiency, in public transit, it creates 7 to 8 times as many jobs as investing that dollars in the old fossil fuel infrastructure. People are just protecting what it is that they have, but the power that the climate movement can bring to that discussion is say we can create an economy with better jobs, with more security, if we fight for the world that we need. In fact, the only world that will keep us healthy and safe. I'm a writer, I believe in deadlines. I mentioned my book is very long. It took me 5 years to write, but I will confess to you, in addition to confessing my errors, that I wrote about 80% of the book in the last 6 months because I was afraid. I had this deadline looming. So I do believe that deadlines help. And we have reached our deadline. We're like the kid who's asked for extension after extension after extension on their term paper. We've tried to massage the numbers. No, we're going to start. We've backdated it. We changed the start time. We've lowered it. We've massaged the numbers. But time is up. This is what we know ahead of Paris. And I think that it would be better, frankly, to have no deal than to lock in a deal that puts us on a trajectory towards catastrophic warming. That the planet cannot afford. And if we can't do it before Paris, let us not lie to ourselves. Let us work for the world that we need. Thank you.
Thank you. It gives us also some of extra agenda, because one of the things I immediately get out of your presentation is that we need to broaden up our coalition, and to broaden up also to, let's say, the more social political aspect of our work, so include parties like trade unions, emancipative groups in our society, and widen up to that sector. What I also hear is that we should not be satisfied with an easy way out, and that we should be very clear on the urgency, but also on the standards for which we stand. So that is also a warning in our road towards Paris, which will be tempting also at the level of power to be able to maintain the connection with the state negotiators. Are there within, because you have a few minutes still, I think. You have to leave. No. It's great. Well, anyway, you've written a book for us, which all of us can read. I've read it from the beginning up till the end, and so You threw, well, anyway, you left that bomb in our community, so we can read your book, we can discuss all these details. Thank you very much. A small present to take with you, and thanks and good luck with all the work you're doing. Okay, thank you for coming.